The galaxy was not a peaceful place. It had never been. For thousands of years, stars had watched empires rise and fall like waves in an endless sea. The great powers, the Zathari Empire, the Kiran Dominion, and the Val Coalition, had spent ages fighting, rebuilding, and preparing to fight again. They called it maintaining balance, but everyone knew the truth. They were just waiting for the next spark, and that spark finally appeared, when humanity arrived. Humans came from a small blue world called Earth, on the very edge of the mapped stars. At first, no one paid attention. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. Their diplomats spoke of peace instead of conquest. The galaxy saw them as harmless, too fragile, too emotional, too young to matter. But time changed everything. Humans learned quickly. They watched, listened, and adapted. When the Zathari waged war, humans studied their battle tactics. When the Dominion built weapons, humans improved their designs. And when the Coalition spoke of peace, humans listened harder than anyone else. Among these new explorers was Captain Elias Varen, commander of the Earth Fleet's diplomatic ship Resolute Dawn. He wasn't a war hero, nor a famous leader. He was just a man who had seen too much of what hate could do. He had watched cities burn on Earth during the old wars. He had seen what happened when people forgot that the enemy was also a living being. And because of that, Elias had promised himself that if he ever stood in front of war again, he would not stay silent. That day came sooner than he expected. The Council of Worlds, a gathering of every major species, met on the orbital station Ilaris Prime, a giant metal ring floating above a burning gas giant. The meeting hall was as grand as it was cold. Transparent walls revealed the swirling red clouds of the planet below, while armed guards from every empire stood behind their leaders. It wasn't a meeting for peace. It was a meeting before war. The Zathari Empire had accused humans of stealing a mining outpost in disputed space. The Dominion claimed that the Val were secretly arming rebel groups. The Coalition wanted sanctions. Everyone wanted revenge. In the center of this chaos stood Captain Elias, the only human representative invited to the emergency summit. He wore the simple gray uniform of the Earth Fleet, no medals, no armor, no guards, just him, one man among monsters of politics and pride. The Zathari Prime spoke first, his voice deep and venomous. "Your kind spreads like a disease, human. You take what is not yours and hide behind false kindness." The Kiran War Minister slammed his metal claws on the table. "Enough talk. Let the fleets decide. We will cleanse this galaxy once and for all." Elias didn't respond immediately. He looked around the circular table, seeing faces twisted by hate and fear. He could feel the air growing heavier, the tension thick like smoke before a storm. Ships outside the station were already aligning their cannons, waiting for the Council's decision. The entire galaxy was seconds away from burning. Finally, Elias spoke. His voice was calm, but it carried through the chamber like a quiet echo. "If war could cleanse," he said, "then Earth would be pure by now." The words struck the room like a thunderbolt. For a moment, no one spoke. Even the translator drones paused, unsure how to process the emotion in his tone. Elias continued softly. "We've seen it all before, cities in flames, children growing up under red skies, people believing that killing would make them safe. But all it left us with was ash and silence. You think war will fix what's broken, but it won't. It never does." The Zathari Prime growled. "Do not compare your primitive planet to the great powers of the stars." Elias met his burning eyes. "Then stop acting like primitives." Gasps filled the chamber. Guards stepped forward, weapons half raised. But Elias didn't flinch. His heart was pounding, but his voice stayed steady. "You all speak of honor, of survival, of destiny. But I've seen what destiny looks like after the bombs fall. It's just empty space, and the sound of people asking why." The silence that followed was heavier than any threat. Outside the council chamber, millions of soldiers waited for orders. Battleships charged their cannons. Entire worlds prepared to die. The galaxy was ready for war. And yet inside that chamber, something small but powerful shifted. The alien leaders looked at the lone human not as a fool, but as something else, something dangerous. Not because of his weapons, not because of his ships, but because of his defiance. Elias Varen stood there, surrounded by those who could crush him in seconds and simply refuse to hate. And somehow, that scared them more than war itself. The silence after Elias Varen's words stretched across the council chamber like an invisible storm. No one moved. No one dared to breathe. It was as if the entire galaxy had paused, listening to one human's voice echo in its heart. The Zathari Prime finally broke the stillness. His scaled face twisted in anger and his eyes glowed with cold fury. "You speak of mercy," he hissed, "as if it were a weapon. Do you think your pity can undo the blood spilled by your kind?" Elias didn't answer right away. He looked at the alien leader not with hatred but with something else, understanding. He had seen those same eyes before on Earth. Soldiers who had lost everything, leaders who couldn't forgive, people too wounded to see beyond their pain. "No," Elias said quietly. "Mercy can't bring back the dead, but it can stop us from joining them." The Kirin War Minister snarled, his mechanical claws scraping the metal table. "Enough of this weakness. You humans hide behind words because you fear the truth. Power decides who is right. Power," Elias repeated softly, "decides who survives, not who is right." That sentence struck deeper than any weapon. Even some of the younger delegates from other races shifted uneasily. They had come expecting a human to beg for peace out of fear, but Elias wasn't begging. He was challenging them. Outside the massive viewports, the lights of war fleets shimmered in orbit. Battleships from every empire waited for a signal, one word from the council, and they would unleash destruction across 100 worlds. Soldiers checked their weapons. Commanders whispered final orders. It felt like the end of everything. Inside, Elias kept speaking. "I know what war does," he said. His voice trembled slightly, but his eyes stayed firm. "It doesn't end when the fighting stops, it stays. It stays in the faces of the children who lost their parents. It stays in the silence of cities that never wake again. And it stays in the hearts of those who survive, who can't sleep because they remember every scream." A hush filled the room. Even the Zathari Prime's anger faltered. Elias took a slow breath and looked around the table. "You think I speak of pity? I don't. I speak of survival, the kind that means more than just being alive. The kind that means being better than the pain that made us fight in the first place." For a moment his voice broke, and the mask of the calm diplomat slipped. The room could see it now. He wasn't trying to sound wise. He was simply tired. Tired of repeating history. Tired of watching new worlds make the same old mistakes. Across the chamber, the Val Coalition's high speaker, a tall, silver-skinned being, finally leaned forward. "You ask us to trust words over war, human," she said softly. "But words cannot stop fleets," Elias nodded. "No, they can't, but someone has to say them before the fleets start firing." She studied him with quiet curiosity. "And if no one listens?" He smiled faintly. "Then at least I'll know I tried." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Some were furious, some thoughtful, others silent. They had seen countless diplomats come and go, each one armed with polished speeches and empty promises. But this human was different. There was no arrogance in his voice, no manipulation. Only honesty, raw and heavy like the gravity of a dying star. Suddenly, a deep vibration ran through the floor. The council's holotable flickered to life, showing the orbiting fleets. Ships were moving into battle positions. A communication officer shouted, "Multiple fleets are charging weapons. The Dominion has locked targeting arrays on Zathari ships." The chamber erupted into chaos. Voices shouted in a dozen languages. The Kirin minister screamed orders into his comlink. Guards drew their weapons. Panic spread like fire. Elias turned toward the holomap, his heart pounding. He could see what was about to happen. The first shot, the retaliation, and then endless war. He took one desperate step forward and slammed his hand on the table. "Stop!" he shouted. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried with something far stronger. Conviction. The room froze. Every eye turned toward him again. The silence that followed was heavy, trembling. Elias's voice was low, shaking but powerful. "If you start this war, it won't end with victory. It will end with silence. Every one of you will lose something. Your sons, your daughters, your worlds. I've seen that silence before. I can still hear it." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of monsters and leaders alike. "But you don't have to hear it too. Not if you stop now." The high speaker of the Val stood, her silver face unreadable. "And what do you suggest, human?" Elias looked at her, then at the image of the fleets above them, poised to destroy each other. "A ceasefire, 1 week. No battles, no weapons fired, just 1 week of peace. If after that you still want war, then you'll have it. But at least for once you'll have tried not to. The room was silent again. 1 week of peace, it sounded foolish in a galaxy that had known only conflict. Yet something in his voice, in his quiet defiance, made it sound possible. The Zathari Prime stared at him for a long moment. Then he said coldly, "You risk much for a promise of nothing." Elias met his gaze. Maybe, but sometimes nothing is all that's left to save. And for the first time in centuries, the Council did not vote for war that day. The message of peace spread across the stars like a strange rumor. The Council's decision shocked every world in the galaxy. A single human's plea had halted fleets that had been ready to destroy each other. Some called it weakness, others called it madness. But a few, in quiet corners of their ships and homes, whispered that maybe, just maybe, it was hope. Captain Elias Varan returned to his ship, the Resolute Dawn, that night with a heavy heart. The halls of his vessel were silent. The crew didn't cheer. They didn't even smile. They knew what his words had done. Bought time, but not safety. 1 week. That was all he had bought for billions of lives. Elias stood at the large viewport in his quarters, staring at the endless stars. His reflection looked older than he remembered. The soft hum of the engines was the only sound in the room. Outside, ships from every nation floated in uneasy silence, their cannons still armed, their commanders still waiting for orders that might come any second. Was it enough? He whispered to himself. Did I just delay the inevitable? His second officer, a young woman named Mira Solon, entered quietly. She was one of the first humans born on a colony world, and she had seen more battles than peace. Her voice was soft but steady. "Sir, the crew's worried. They think the ceasefire won't last." Elias gave a faint smile. "Neither do I. Then why fight for it?" she asked. He turned to the window again. "Because sometimes a single breath before the fire starts is enough to change the way we see the flames." Mira didn't fully understand, but she nodded. She had learned something about Elias. He never believed peace was easy, but he believed it was worth trying. Across the galaxy, strange things began to happen. On a frozen Zathari outpost, soldiers who had once prepared to storm human colonies now found themselves staring at the sky, wondering what peace would feel like. In the Kiran Dominion, where children were trained to fight from the age of 6, a few teachers paused their lessons to tell their students about the human who said no. And on the capital world of the Val Coalition, the high speaker watched the hollow screens showing the ceasefire's first day. She found herself remembering the human's eyes, not fearful, not arrogant, just tired of war. She wondered if all humans carried that same sadness in them. But not everyone wanted peace. Deep within the Dominion's fleet, Admiral Karth Vor seethed with rage. His claws dug into the metal railing of his command bridge. "One weak creature from an insignificant world dares to stop destiny," he growled. "The Council has lost its spine." His second-in-command hesitated. "The ceasefire order is absolute, Admiral." "Any violation is worth the risk," Karth interrupted. "The Dominion was born in fire. We will not kneel because of human tears." He turned to his communication officer. "Prepare the stealth ships. If we strike without being seen, the Council will blame the Zathari. The war will resume, and this insult will be forgotten." The officer bowed his head in silence. The order was treason, but fear ruled stronger than conscience. Back aboard the Resolute Dawn, the days passed slowly. Each hour felt like walking on the edge of a blade. Elias spent most of his time in the observation deck, watching the reports from the Council channels. Minor conflicts flared here and there, old wounds reopening, but for the most part, the galaxy held its breath. Then, on the 6th day, the alarm sounded. "Unauthorized weapon discharge detected in the Relan sector," shouted the comms officer. Elias rushed to the bridge. "Who fired?" "Unknown," came the reply. "But the Zathari are being blamed. Dominion ships are moving into attack positions." Mira turned to him, panic in her voice. "Sir, if they fire, the ceasefire will collapse." Elias clenched his fists. He knew what this was. Someone wanted war again. Maybe they never stopped wanting it. But if he didn't act now, everything he had fought for would vanish in flames. "Patch me through to all channels," he ordered. "Every fleet, every commander." Within seconds, his face appeared on hundreds of ships' displays across the sector. Commanders, admirals, and soldiers saw the tired human once again, standing in front of them with nothing but his voice. "This is Captain Elias Varon of Earth Fleet," he said firmly. "Before you fire that first shot, remember what you'll be starting. You'll tell your soldiers it's for honor. You'll tell your people it's for safety. But when the fires burn and your children ask why, what will you say then?" He paused, letting the silence carry his words. Maybe it wasn't the Zathari. Maybe it wasn't the Dominion. Maybe it doesn't matter who shot first. What matters is who decides to end it. Across the fleets, hesitation rippled through the ranks. Commanders looked at each other. Hands hovered over firing controls. The first missile remained unfired, but aboard the Dominion flagship, Admiral Karth Vor growled, "Fool, you can't stop the inevitable." He raised his claw. "Fire!" At that same moment, the Resolute Dawn detected the missile launch. The screen flashed red. Mira's voice broke. "Incoming strike, targeting the Zathari cruiser." Elias made his decision in a heartbeat. "Change course," he said quietly. "Put us between them." Mira froze. "Sir, that's suicide." "I know," he said. "But maybe one sacrifice can stop 1,000 more." The Resolute Dawn turned sharply, engines roaring as it moved into the missile's path. The crew braced for impact. Elias closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "Let this mean something." And as the bright light of the missile filled the stars, the galaxy watched, helpless as one human ship defied war itself. The stars lit up with fire. The missile struck the Resolute Dawn head-on, and for one blinding second the darkness of space turned white. Every ship in orbit saw the explosion. Every commander, every soldier, every civilian watching the live broadcasts across the systems. Then silence. The communication lines crackled. Static replaced the voice of Captain Elias Varon. On the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Admiral Karth Vor stared at the burning fragments drifting where the human ship had been. He had expected screams or panic or vengeance, but all he felt was quiet. He turned to his officers, trying to mask his unease. "They chose their end," he said coldly. "Let this be a lesson to anyone who stands in the way of destiny." But even as he spoke, his voice shook. Deep down, he knew something was wrong. The silence didn't feel like victory. It felt like guilt. On the Zathari flagship, chaos erupted. Alarms blared and officers shouted over one another. "The human vessel, gone. They shielded us from the strike." The Zathari Prime rose slowly from his seat. His sharp claws dug into the armrest, his scaled face unreadable. "They sacrificed themselves." A young officer nodded, voice trembling. "Yes, Your Excellency." The human ship moved directly into the path. The Prime said nothing. His gaze drifted to the screen where glowing debris floated like falling stars. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he did not understand. A weight pressing on his chest, unfamiliar and painful. Was this what humans called sorrow? Across the galaxy, millions watched the news in disbelief. The Resolute Dawn, the human ship that had stood between fleets, was gone. Social feeds filled with messages, tears, anger, and confusion. Some called it foolishness. Others called it bravery. But for most, it was something deeper, something that made them question everything they had believed about humans. On Earth, people gathered in silence at dawn, watching the skies. In the colonies, children asked their parents why Captain Varon had done it. No one had an easy answer. Some said he had died for peace. Others said he had died for hope. But no one could deny one truth. His sacrifice had stopped the war, at least for now. But the galaxy was not done with him yet. Hours after the explosion, deep scanners picked up faint energy readings in the wreckage field. A small damaged escape pod drifted among the remains of the Resolute Dawn. It was nearly invisible, its life support flickering, its systems failing. Inside, Captain Elias Varon was barely conscious. Blood covered his face and smoke filled the pod. He could hardly breathe. He reached for the cracked comms unit, his fingers shaking. "This is Captain Varon," he whispered weakly. "If anyone can hear me, don't fire, please," Static replied. Then nothing. He leaned back, eyes half closed, his breath shallow. Pain spread through his chest, but his mind drifted somewhere else. To Earth, to blue skies, to the laughter of people who still believed in kindness. He had seen so much death. He didn't want to die seeing more of it. His voice was barely a whisper now. "Just 1 week of peace. That's all I asked for." Then darkness took him. The next morning, the galaxy woke to a strange calm. No fleets moved. No shots were fired. Even the Dominion's warships, so eager for blood, remained motionless. Every commander had seen what had happened. Every soldier had witnessed the human ship move into the missile's path without hesitation. It was more powerful than any weapon. In the council chamber, the High Speaker of the Vale stood before the delegates. "You all saw it," she said quietly. "A single human gave his life so that ours might not be lost. Is this what we call weakness? Is this what we call cowardice?" No one spoke. The Chiron minister looked down, his claws trembling. He died protecting the very enemy who accused his people of crimes. The Zathari Prime lowered his head. He died showing us what strength truly means. And for the first time in centuries, the council agreed unanimously to extend the ceasefire indefinitely. No more fighting! No more blood. They called it the Dawn Accord, named after the ship that had vanished in fire. Far from the council, aboard a small rescue vessel searching the wreckage, a faint signal flickered again. A Chiron medic leaned over the sensor display. "Commander, there's something out there." "Life signs. Human." The commander's eyes widened. "Impossible." "That explosion, it's weak, but it's real," the medic said. "Someone's alive." Moments later, they located the pod, drifting silently among the metal shards. When they opened it, smoke poured out. Inside lay Captain Elias Varon, unconscious but breathing. His uniform was torn, his body broken, but his heart still beat. The Chiron commander, a warrior who had once sworn to destroy humanity, stared down at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he saluted. "Get him to medical," he said softly. "The man who stopped a war does not die today." Hours later, as Elias floated in and out of sleep, he heard faint voices. "He's stable. The burns are deep, but he'll live." He didn't know where he was. He didn't care. Somewhere in the haze, he smiled weakly. Maybe, just maybe, the galaxy would remember. Not the war. Not the hate. But the moment one human stood against it all and chose to save, instead of destroy, the light was soft and white when Elias Varon opened his eyes again. For a moment he thought he was dead. The air smelled clean. The sound of machines was gentle and gravity felt strange beneath him. Then a voice broke through the silence. "You are safe, Captain," said a calm, metallic tone. "You are aboard the Chiron medical vessel Sanctum's Mercy." Elias blinked. His body ached. Every breath burned. He turned his head slightly and saw a tall figure beside his bed. A Chiron medic, her metal body gleaming softly in the light. Her four eyes blinked in rhythm, her voice surprisingly kind. "You have been unconscious for 3 days," she said. "You were found in an escape pod among the wreckage of your ship. You should not have survived." Elias gave a weak smile. "Humans have a habit of doing things we shouldn't." The medic tilted her head. "You risked your life to save enemies. Why?" Elias looked at her, a being whose species had once declared humanity too emotional for the stars. He managed a faint laugh. "Because if we only save those we call friends, then peace will never be more than a word." The medic didn't reply, but something in her expression changed. She had seen death countless times, but she had never seen someone speak of peace while lying broken on a bed, wrapped in scars of sacrifice. When the news spread that Captain Elias Varon had survived, the galaxy trembled again, but this time, not in fear. For days, every broadcast spoke of him. His sacrifice had already become a legend. Statues were built in human colonies, songs written by the Val, and even among the cold Dominion worlds, his name was whispered like a secret prayer. But not everyone celebrated. In the dark halls of the Dominion flagship Eternal Wrath, Admiral Karth Vor stared at the screen with pure hatred. "He lives," he growled. "He survives again and again. He turns my failure into their hope." His claws crushed the cup in his hand. "As long as he breathes, peace will spread like a disease. We will finish what we started." The officer beside him shifted nervously. "Admiral, the Council has declared the Dawn Accord permanent. Any aggression now will be seen as treason." Karth's eyes burned red. "Then we'll act in shadows. The galaxy worships their savior. Fine, let them. We'll show them that even their hero bleeds." Back aboard the Sanctum's Mercy, Elias slowly regained his strength. His body healed, but his heart felt heavier than ever. He had seen the reports. The Dawn Accord signed by every empire, the fleet standing down, the soldiers returning home. Peace had finally come, yet he knew peace was fragile. One spark, one lie could end it all. Mirasolin, his loyal officer, visited him often. Her eyes were red from crying the day she heard he was alive. She brought him a small metal badge, the last surviving piece of the Resolute Dawn's hull. It was scratched and burned, but the engraved name was still visible. Elias took it gently, running his fingers over the letters. "She gave everything," he whispered. "So did you," Mira said softly. "The galaxy owes you its peace," he shook his head. "No one owes me anything. They just have to remember what it cost." Mira hesitated. "And if they forget?" Elias looked out the viewport where stars glittered like distant candles. "Then I'll remind them." Days passed and slowly Elias began to walk again. The Kirin crew treated him with quiet respect. Some saluted him when he passed by. Others left small offerings, pieces of crystal, folded notes, symbols of honor. One evening, the Kirin medic approached him again. "Captain, a message has arrived." "It is from the Zathari Prime himself," Elias frowned. "Play it." The hologram shimmered to life, showing the reptilian leader who had once threatened war. His tone was calm, heavy with emotion. "Human, I once called your kind weak. I was wrong. The strength you showed was something my people have never known. The Dawn Accord will hold, and not out of fear but out of respect. The galaxy owes you a debt that cannot be repaid." The message ended. Elias stood in silence, his eyes reflecting the stars outside. "Then we all have to be worthy of it," he said quietly. "But peace never comes without shadows." That night, as the Sanctum's Mercy drifted through quiet space, a Dominion stealth drone crept from the darkness. It moved like a ghost, undetectable to sensors. Inside, it carried a single purpose: to end what Admiral Karth could not control. The drone locked onto the medical ship's life signs. A quiet click echoed in its metal frame. Target acquired: Elias Varon. Inside his room, Elias sat by the window, lost in thought. He didn't see the red light blinking faintly outside. He didn't hear the hum of the approaching death. He only whispered to himself, maybe peace was worth the pain. And then, somewhere deep in the void, the drone's engine flickered before it could fire. Another ship appeared from hyperspace, sleek and silver, bearing the insignia of the Val Coalition. Its scanners caught the stealth drone in an instant, and a bright energy beam tore it apart before it could strike. On the bridge, the Val High speaker exhaled in relief. "Not today," she said softly. "The galaxy still needs him." In his room, Elias felt the faint vibration of the explosion but thought nothing of it. He simply closed his eyes, holding the broken metal badge close to his chest. He didn't know that once again his life had come within seconds of ending. He didn't know that his survival had already become more than a symbol. It had become a promise. Because somewhere in the hearts of billions, across every world and every sky, a new belief was growing. If one human's defiance could stop a war, then maybe one heart could save the galaxy. The stars outside the Sanctum's Mercy glowed softly, but Elias Varon could not sleep. His body had healed, yet his dreams were filled with fire and screams. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the explosion of his ship, his friends vanishing in the light. He often sat by the viewport, watching the endless black sea of space. Peace had come, yes, but it felt fragile, like glass that could shatter with one wrong touch. He knew something was still out there and something waiting. One morning, Mirasolin entered his room with quiet urgency. Her face was pale. "Captain," she said, "you need to see this." Elias followed her to the ship's command deck. The Kirin medic was there too, along with several officers from different species. The holoscreen showed a transmission, static-filled and broken, but clear enough to send a chill through everyone in the room. It was Admiral Karth Vor. "Peace?" Karth's deep voice rumbled through the speakers. "You call this peace? No, this is weakness dressed in kindness. And weakness must be erased." The message ended with coordinates, a warning or a challenge. The Kirin commander turned to Elias. "We do not understand. The Dominion was part of the Accord. Why would they send this?" Elias's jaw tightened. "Because some men don't want peace. They want power." Within hours, reports began to flood in. Small attacks across the border worlds. Civilian ships vanishing. Colonies burned. But the Dominion government denied everything. Rogue factions, they claimed. Criminals acting without command. But Elias knew better. He had seen this pattern before. A shadow war hidden beneath lies. He looked at Mira. If we don't stop this now, peace will die before it even begins. Mira hesitated. You're still recovering. You can't. I don't have a choice, Elias interrupted gently. I started this piece with blood. I won't watch it fall apart. The Sanctum's mercy was not a warship, but Elias had something stronger than weapons. The truth. He decided to take the message of warning to the Galactic Council. If he could prove the Dominion's betrayal, maybe the galaxy would unite again before the fire spread. The journey to the Council world, Helion Prime, took 3 days. During that time, Elias spent hours talking with the crew. He spoke to Kiran engineers, Vol scientists, and even a young Zathari soldier who once fought against humans. Each of them carried stories. Loss, hope, guilt. When the young Zathari said softly, I thought humans were monsters, Elias smiled sadly and replied, Sometimes we are, but sometimes we try to be better. By the end of the trip, the whole crew had come to see Elias not as a hero, but as a reminder that courage wasn't born from strength, but from pain. When they finally arrived at Helion Prime, the council hall shimmered like a jewel in space, vast, bright, and full of voices. Dozens of species filled the chambers, their leaders arguing, their tempers flaring. Elias stepped forward slowly, wearing the simple uniform of a Terran officer. Its edges still burned from the resolute dawn. The noise faded as he entered, a voice echoed through the hall. Captain Elias Varen of Earth, the speaker announced, the savior of the Accord. Elias stood before them and spoke in a steady, calm voice. Peace is not just a treaty, it's a promise. But a promise means nothing if we let fear and pride destroy it. He played Admiral Karth's message for everyone to see. The council erupted into chaos, accusations, denial, anger. The Dominion delegates shouted that it was a forgery. Others demanded investigation. Elias waited for the noise to fade. Then he said softly, I'm not asking you to fight. I'm asking you to see. Look at what we are becoming again. Divided, suspicious, afraid. That's how wars begin. For a long time, no one spoke. Then the Kiran High Priestess rose and said, Perhaps. The human is right. Peace requires courage too. The hall fell silent. For the first time, the galaxy listened, not to fear, but to hope. But far away in the cold reaches of space, Admiral Karth watched the broadcast from his hidden command ship. His claws tapped against the metal table. Let them talk, he growled. Words cannot stop war. Beside him stood a figure cloaked in shadows, someone not Dominion, not human. Their voice was low and smooth. You speak of war, Admiral, but we seek something greater and control. Let the human speak. Every word he says brings us closer to chaos. And when chaos comes, we will rule what remains. Karth narrowed his eyes. And who are you to command me? The figure smiled beneath the hood. Not your commander, your ally. They handed him a small device glowing red. This will finish what you began. Back on Helion Prime, as Elias returned to his quarters that night, he looked out at the stars again. He wanted to believe that peace would hold, but something deep inside whispered otherwise. Mira found him there, lost in thought. You did it, she said gently. They listened to you. Elias nodded slowly. Maybe, but listening isn't the same as believing, she frowned. You think Karth will try again? He turned to face her, his eyes tired but steady. I don't think he ever stopped. Outside the viewport, a faint red shimmer pulsed in the darkness, distant, almost invisible. But it was there, waiting. The shadow behind peace had begun to move. The galaxy had gone quiet, too quiet. Ships still patrolled the borders, and the council still held meetings about peace and unity. But underneath all that calm, fear was growing again. Rumors spread through every communication channel. A secret fleet, strange energy signals near the Dominion border, planets losing contact one by one. Captain Elias Varen felt it long before the reports came in. He could feel the tension, like a cold wind before a storm. Mira Solon watched him from across the briefing table on the Sanctum's Mercy. You've been awake for 2 nights, she said softly. You can't keep doing this, Captain. Elias smiled faintly but didn't look up from the holo display. Peace needs watching, Mira. It doesn't guard itself. Before she could answer, the alarm sounded, sharp and chilling. The screen flashed red. Unidentified fleet entering Helion sector. The bridge filled with voices, commands, panic. Ships appeared on the sensors, massive, dark, and silent. Not Dominion, not Zathari, not Vale. Unknown. But leading them, unmistakable, was Admiral Karth Vor's flagship. The shadow behind peace had arrived. The Council called for immediate evacuation. Leaders fled to safe zones. Fleet scrambled to prepare for battle. But Elias didn't move. He stared at the holographic map, watching the enemy formation closing in. "They're heading straight for Helion Prime," Mira said. "If they reach the planet, everything will burn." Elias took a deep breath. "Then we stop them before they get there." Mira blinked. "With what?" "One ship?" He smiled faintly. "Not with guns. With something stronger." She frowned, confused, but she knew that look in his eyes. It was the same look he had the day he faced the Council and stopped a war with nothing but his words. As the enemy fleet entered orbit, Elias ordered a direct broadcast on all frequencies. His crew protested. It was suicide. But he only said, "If someone doesn't speak now, no one will live to speak again." When his voice echoed across the galaxy, billions heard it. From the lowest mining colony to the highest government hall, every screen flickered to life with the image of a tired man standing before the stars. "This is Captain Elias Varon of Earth," he began quietly. "Once before I asked you to stop a war. You listened. You gave the galaxy a chance to breathe again. And now, someone wants to take that away." His eyes were calm, but there was fire behind them. "Admiral Karth, I know you can hear me. You think peace made us weak. You think kindness is surrender. But you're wrong. Peace takes more courage than war ever will." There was a long silence. Then another voice cut through the channel, deep and cruel. "You talk too much, human. You think your words can stop this?" Elias looked straight into the camera. "They already did once. And they will again." Suddenly, the unknown fleet began to move, but not toward Helion. The smaller ships broke formation. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Then, on thousands of screens, Dominion captains appeared, angry, shouting, turning their guns on Karth's own flagship. Mira gasped. "They're firing on him!" Elias nodded slowly. "Not everyone wants to follow a tyrant." The space around Helion Prime lit up with explosions, bright, blinding. The rebel ships fought fiercely, sacrificing themselves to stop Karth's advance. But the Admiral's flagship kept pushing forward, massive cannons glowing like suns. Elias turned to Mira. "Prepare the reactor. Route all power to the transmitter." Her eyes widened. "You're not thinking of—" "I am," he said softly. "If we can't stop him with weapons, maybe we can show him something he's forgotten." The Sanctum's Mercy rose to meet the enemy ship. The two vessels faced each other above the golden clouds of Helion Prime. Elias opened one last broadcast. His voice was steady. "Admiral, look outside your window. Look at the world beneath you. Millions of lives, different species, different stories, but they all want the same thing. To live, to see another sunrise. If that's weakness, then I'll be weak forever." He turned to Mira and gave her a small, sad smile. "If this works, tell them we tried." Before she could answer, he pressed the final command. The Sanctum's Mercy released a pulse of pure energy, light brighter than any weapon. It wasn't meant to destroy, but to show. It projected images from every world in the Accord. Faces, families, children playing under alien skies, all united in one message. We choose peace. The light spread across the battlefield. For a moment, even the enemy ships stopped firing. The massive flagship of Admiral Karth drifted in silence. Through the glow, his face appeared on the screen, eyes wide, expression trembling. He whispered, "What have you done?" Elias's voice was faint but clear. "Reminded you who we are." Then the light faded. The Sanctum's Mercy was gone. Days later, when the smoke cleared, the war never began. Karth's fleet surrendered. The shadow that had guided him vanished, leaving only questions. But across the galaxy, people spoke one name, Elias Varon. They said he didn't die. Some said his ship turned into light and joined the stars. Others said he became part of the peace he fought for. Mira Solon, standing before the new council monument, placed a small earth flower at its base. The stone was simple. It read, "He refused to hate." As she looked up at the stars, a faint light flickered among them, steady, gentle, unending. And somewhere in that vast, endless sky, it felt as if Elias Varon was still watching. whispering to every world that could hear, "Hold the peace. Don't let it die."